been involved in so many different realms on this story, but I'm curious to talk about this sort of other language, this music language. I feel like there's a very distinct theme for the Les Filles and for the Mohawk. And I'm curious to hear what were some of the characteristics or the parameters that you had in building each of these pieces.
That's a great question. I think that a big part of how I approach my compositions are really thinking about creating a world with the music. So each of the shows that I've written all have a different like tonal identity. So really finding what is the voice of Les Filles, what is the voice of this world, and then kind of painting within that. So it's sort of a feeling that you have to have of like, does this feel like the identity of Les Filles du Roi, or this story, this world that's being created, and then from there you can sort of expand tonally into different areas to sort of serve each character. So an example of that would be like for Les Filles du Roi, we're talking very much um, triumphant chords, almost very much based on religious music. You know, like there's lots of prayers in the piece that are fully original. Um, well, like I didn't write the prayer, but like the music is original. But then looking at that as being this very 1-4-5 structure for the church, and then thinking of incorporating strings and more harmonics and you know the tones, the quarter tones between the piano notes to reflect the indigenous sounds or the indigenous identity that is kind of existing in the in between. And so all of that's intentional and trying to find that like what roots the sound. If you're learning like a song, in ceremony or through a song carrier, that song there, it doesn't live in the piano tones. It doesn't live in this like Western structure of music of how we've heard things or been taught music. And so that was also really interesting to have live in this, where when you hit the drum, that then resonates in all sorts of really exciting ways, and helps to give us something that's rooted to the characters.
I love this like idea of the piano being attached to like the church and how that influences things, and then how the strings have this sort of like fluidity within it that is accessible, is what I'm hearing. Um, I'm also curious because you spoke about this on the VIF podcast, how there were certain chords that were influenced by this imagery of soaring over the land. And I'm curious to hear about that process for you and how the land influences the music.
Well, the first thing that I heard as it relates to this show when I was writing it 10 years ago was really kind of thinking of the expansiveness of rural, Turtle Island. I grew up in Northern Ontario, and just, driving through territories and forests that just go on forever. Like and I think rural BC is the same, where you can drive for so long without coming across a town. And I just imagined that musically of what that would feel like, sort of soaring over these forests and fields that would go on forever, and thinking about, well, what would that, and it sort of had an unfolding quality to me, a sort of infinity quality. And that's where that like this like beginning, that it's almost like you're starting and then it just keeps growing from there. And so that was really exciting to have that be some of the starting kind of thematic material that really can be built on like I was saying before about the identity of the music, that was such a grounding force for the whole score.
I'd love to open it up to the audience if there's any questions. Yeah. Oh, how about I run the mic up to you?
I think you just mentioned something about church music having a 1-4-5 structure. Can you elaborate on that?
I think how I use that within this piece is thinking about how do the characters, the ways that they're singing and the music that they're bringing help to both serve them in terms of their own prayers or their own feelings that they have about a certain, whatever they're going through, but then also have that mirror what will be familiar to people who are familiar with that kind of music.
Hi, thank you so much for being here and answering these questions and talking a little bit about your process. I had a question about instrumentation. So, choices of instruments, when using them, when not to use them, and which ones. So, for example, was there a role for the piano versus a different role for the strings? You did speak a little bit about that at the beginning, but I was thinking also about the organ and some of the other instruments in there as well.
Thank you so much for that question. I never get to talk about these things. I feel like a big part of what I talk about a lot is the story and the direction. And so to talk about the music and to know that you're interested in that is just like my favorite thing ever. I feel like I worked with a group of arrangers and orchestrators. It was Elliot Vaughn, who also has orchestrated a bunch of other work for me. He's sort of my main guy. But all of these people are string players, which is a really, I think it kind of, you can hear it. So Elliot Vaughn, Martin Riesel, and John Kostelik. So these three, each of them, two violists, one cellist, and a guitar player. So their ear and their strengths really contribute to the realization of this string music, because I can describe to them what I'm hearing and how it's all fitting together, but they actually know how to like take that further. And they're always huge, like Elliot in particular, he sees this work as being, he wants the player to discover something new every time they play it. So the detail and the richness in the music, it's like it's just so complex. It's all complex because we talk about all these things, talking about character and, the church and the, indigenous culture and drumming music and all this. We talk about all those things to inform the orchestration and to inform the arrangement. And so it's all in there all the time. So whenever you see a character appear on screen or have a moment, you're also kind of either getting a nod to their theme, a nod to their background, their belief, because all that's layered in. And then the other thing that Elliot brought to it when we first started working, he says, I want to use a pump organ, because a pump organ was something that was actually used in these, because it wasn't like a full piano. It's like literally like a little miniature, with the little pedals, and we had it in the live show, in the live stage show. But then we also included it. So when you're hearing that, like before the Je vous salue Marie, when you're hearing this like organ sound,
Je vous salue Marie, je vous salue Marie, pleine de grâce.
that's the pump organ. So it was really important to bring in this very much this like authentic, grounded sound that would have been at the time, but then have that be layered in very contemporary musical theater kind of writing. And so it's always really exciting to be able to do that, because I just think that it's something that you might not be able to hear initially, but you feel it. So that's what's really such an extraordinary process in orchestrating and arranging, is getting to have that like character and world building conversation with people who can then layer it musically with you.
That's so great. Thank you so much for that. I love how you just got bubbly and your eyes were glistening.
Well, it's because these are things that we kind of, when we're creating it, we never, it's all just background. It's kind of layered in there in terms of what you feel, but it's very rarely kind of front and center, as to what you're taking away. Most of that's like vocals or like the high string parts. But I do believe that in this, when you're getting to experience it, like seeing some of those shots where it's like going over the land, I do feel that all of that richness that was brought into the orchestration kind of is just heightened and enhanced by the visuals.
I noticed there was a lot of piano and strings. Was there, and towards the end, I did hear some more like native drums. Was it a choice, or was there a reason there wasn't more of the native instrumentation included, or was that more of a product of writing the music and then the movie?
So the way that I wrote the music is really trying to have the music serve the story, the music serve the characters. And so I feel like when when drums are introduced, when vocables are introduced, and they're introduced during winter. It's the first time you hear them is when you hear the voices of the women from the longhouse calling to these characters and sort of acting as a bit of a like relief for them of like there are people waiting for us. There is like this like sound of home, right? That they are able to remind each other of. And so that's really intentional for it to be seen as a like a useful thing, like it's something that serves their character journey. Um and also for the audience to sort of get a little bit of a glimmer of these women and to be like, what, there's something out there, there's someone out there, there's like they're hearing these songs, for that to then when we do arrive to the longhouse and see this whole community, that it's something that we've been yearning for. Um, and also was such a dream in creating this was because Julie and I, so my co-writer and also who's the lead in the film, we went to jewelers, and so we got to work with the archaeologists and the historians and the elders all at this jewelers longhouse. But the film offered us the opportunity to share that with you, you know, and for you to be able to see what it is, that like magnificent beauty that, you know, that they were able to uncover, you know. And this is even just a small one. There's some that are like hundreds of these longhouses. Like this one that we were at had 3, but they're like the largest ones have like hundreds and hundreds of them with tons of fire pits, everyone living together. And so that was really exciting to share. And so by layering that music in when I did, it was about leading towards that moment of payoff where we returned to the village. And so before that moment, for the characters, there was never, for me at least, a moment where I felt that the characters would need that callback to their community, or that they would have that need until they reach winter and they're kind of stuck there, and they want to go home, you know, and then that's when that would come in as something that's really fueling them. So yeah, that's why it came in there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
I'm curious if, because the music came first and it was a staged play, if people didn't know that before. And I'm curious if you needed to go back in again and create new music for the film version, or if the film adapted to the music.
I love this. This is great. Yeah, we did. We had to do a lot of changes. So when we did the cast album, that was basically once we finished the stage production, basically like the next week we went into the studio and we had 4 days, and it was just like, let's just get this, you know, done. And that album came out in 2019. And so it wasn't meant to then become a film or become anything else. It was just that we wanted to have something that was like, if we, you know, never get to do this again, at least we have the music, you know. And so then when we then started to work towards turning it into a film, what we realized is that I would have to do a lot more composing to bridge, right? And if you listen really closely, you would be able to hear the new compositions, because they're not quite like they're not quite exactly matched, like even piano wise, just like the piano sound is slightly different in the new compositions than because you just can't, like, you can't really capture like where the mics were positioned on that specific piano. Even if we went back to that specific piano, you know, it's just almost impossible to replicate. So yeah, so I had to do a lot of that bridging And then we also went into like the fully mastered files and started to rework it and move things around and quiet certain instruments just so that you could hear voice on top of them, because that was also never a plan, was to have, you know, characters' lines be on top of it. So yeah, it was a lot of work in kind of Frankensteining the recording we did to fit the film, which is very backwards. Like that's not the way that it works normally. So it was a nice challenge, like a little bit of a puzzle.
And the album is available on Corey's website, by the way. And I believe also on Spotify.
Yeah, it's everywhere online, so you can stream it anywhere.
So you still have access to the music.
Corey, you talked a little bit about the interesting puzzle with the music, and I'm just wondering if there are any other interesting challenges, puzzles that stand out for you in terms of adapting from the stage to the screen. What were some of those nuts you had to crack, where you had those epiphany moments? It's like, oh, we've figured it out. We've solved the riddle. Is there anything that stands out?
Well, I think a big piece that we didn't know that we had actually solved, or that it really worked until we finally had it in front of an audience, was just all of the theater moments. Even up until the moment that we were sharing it with the first film festival, I still wasn't sure if it was going to work, to be honest. I was like, okay, this is the idea. This is what we're going with, these sort of dreamlike moments in a theater, black box, sort of asking the audience to kind of take this leap and imagine the rest, you know. And and so that was sort of our idea. We had this framework of what we were putting out there, but we weren't really sure if it was going to work. And so that was kind of a bit of a puzzle to solve, was to figure out where are those opportunities to go deeper into the character's journey. And because once you put something in a black box, it's kind of like you can do anything, right? You break the mold and you can just have it live in whatever way you want, as much or as little. And then once it was received by an audience, I was finally like, the majority of the feedback that I've gotten from audiences are that they almost wish there was more of that, it felt like such a rich way of exploring the internal life of these women and these characters, that they were kind of yearning for those moments. And when they came back, they were really excited. But I would say I wasn't sure that was a success, or that we had done it right, or that we had adapted that in the right way up until it reached an audience. But I'm happy that it's exciting, and I'm happy that Les Filles can contribute to that, because I do, I feel like what I've seen in a lot of, well, at least commercial films, is just like very literal storytelling. Like the thing is the thing that it's supposed to be, and if it's not believable, then it kind of breaks the illusion. And I'm so proud that Les Filles can be a balance to that, kind of allowing audiences to take what we do in the theater so well, but apply that to film and say, let's dream together, and let's imagine the richness of these characters' lives, for them.
Lisanne, don't be afraid, I am here for you. We are a part of it all. Together like queens, sister, you and I. We're off to find the new world. We won't be afraid of the road ahead. We are a part of it all.
We shot this in like the second year of the pandemic. And so part of our draw to do this was that we wanted to be outside all the time. Film sets were all being shut down. We had a number of shows that we were rehearsing in theaters. They were also being shut down just because, COVID and people weren't able to go to work. So being outside was like amazing. And the intention was really just to share it with the audience who we were supposed to tour it to. You know, we were supposed to tour it to different venues across Canada before the pandemic hit. And so that was our goal. Now with all of this, you know, getting into tons of film festivals, winning awards, and now coming back here, I think really we're not sure of what that final finish line will look like, but we're just trying to make it so that as many people get to see the film as possible. And who knows? What I know is that it's just been surprising every step of the way, and so I feel like I'll just keep being surprised.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.
Gas hast en